try to provide a bit of a window into how you've managed some of your relationships with sponsors. And I think maybe the best example of that would be your relationship with Berkley through the years. Yeah. And it's one of the, I love Berkley. It's maybe my all-time favorite fishing company. I fell in love with power bait when I was 17 years old. I learned then at a small quarry in southern Minnesota how effective power bait was. It just tripped the triggers of these smallmouth bass in this quarry, and I was using just regular plastic worms. They were like, whatever. I put on a power bait and it was like night and day. From then on, I've been a true believer in power bait, but also just I love Berkley just in general. But tell me like how that relationship developed. And then you guys have worked so closely with that company to develop products. And I think it's super interesting, especially now, to see how they primarily were known as like more soft baits, but they have really, with you guys doing the flicker minnow, and then now just in general, their hard bait selection is just impressive. And so they did their hooks, everything. Just talk about the Berkley as your relationship with that company.
Yeah, this is kind of a cool story. And again, sometimes you have the good Lord, not sometimes, the good Lord sits on everyone's shoulders. And I think everyone that's alive can look at times where you go, wow, that happened. And it was weird why it happened. But I truly believe that way. And Keith and I had worked with Storm Lures for years. And the Storm family, and it was a family company, Storm family had some really good walleye lures. And they were a southern-based company, and they didn't realize even what they had for walleyes. They knew the Hottentots were good on Saginaw Bay. That's when I started working for them. That was the extent of what the family knew about walleye baits. They had a bait called the Thunderstick Junior that when we started fishing it, we started catching walleyes all over the place. So personally, both Keith and I, again, being analytical and things that we do, we looked at actions of crankbaits really heavy duty. And I felt that we had a pretty good handle on, I could look at a bait in the water and think, that'll be a good bait, or that one won't be very well, a real good bait. And sometimes the fish would fool me. I'd go buy a bunch of new baits that I'd like to try, and they looked really good to me, and I never could get a bite from a walleye on them, So the successes and failures through the years of trolling crankbaits, so many hours, tens of thousands of hours. And so basically I had some knowledge there. We helped the Storm family, make the two of us and Gary Gray, which is a local guy. He's now passed, but Gary was from the Lake Winnebago area. We helped Storm become a powerhouse in the upper Midwest. Their sales were extremely good, to the point where the Big Daddy company, Rapala, probably didn't like what was going on because it was pretty hardcore competition, And so Rapala bought them. So we went with Keith and I went with the transition. We were with Rapala and Storm for, 4 or 5, 6 years, but that was right when we started the TV show too. And so we want to do those high-tech animations. So this story gets to be a little bit long, but it all fits together so beautifully. It's kind of a neat thing to learn. And I don't know if I ever really told the public. I've told people, how this went, but it shows you kind of the side of business also, right?
No.
And again, that's what this NPAA thing is going to be about. We're going to talk about hardcore business, stuff that maybe people are afraid of. I mean, I don't think any of my companies are going to fire Chase and I. I don't believe that they will, not if I'm telling the true stories and stuff like that. It is what it is. And, I've been blessed by working with a lot of good companies. And so I go back to that, and we were building these animations, right? But yet I couldn't get Rapala Storm / that company to support us with any advertising. And when you go on doing a professional television show, it's expensive. You have to buy the airtime You have to do all the production. So that means you're going on the road. If you have a shooter, you're paying them on a per day basis at the very least. Maybe they're your employee. It's expensive. And if you don't have any help from the companies where you're actually teaching people how to use their products and how to catch fish with their things, it gets to be frustrating, to say the least. So part of working with the companies is sitting down and having heart-to-heart talks with them and saying, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I think that we can bring to the table. And, most of the time you're going to get a no, but once in a while you'll get a yes, and you'll have an opportunity at that point in time. If you get a yes, take advantage of it, take care of your company. But we were doing these cool animations, and I figured at that time, when we did a small animation in the TV show, I figured that our cost was around $2,000. And so the show's in business for a couple of years, and I still can't get Rapala to advertise with the show. And I get it, they were advertising with the lenders and things like that. So business is business. But I went back and I had asked if we could maybe have a non-exclusive with them, because my personal contracts weren't that great. And, there was a much bigger picture here, right? With television and us building the business that we were with Bass Pro and Mercury Support and, all that kind of stuff is, we were building a pretty big deal. I wasn't looking at anything small with the show from the very beginning. Having Ron and Al Linder as my friends, they encouraged us to build this show too. And we're good friends to this day. And, so that's what we were trying to do. I just won an award from them for being the best promoter in the United States for storm lures. They gave me the award in January. I asked if we could get some advertising help. And a little bit later in the year, they said, well, we're not going to advertise with the show. And we've reevaluated our relationship. If you guys are consistent in doing this television show, then we don't think you'll be able to do a good job for us if you're going to start going non-exclusive. And I went, really? I mean, we use your stuff and it's good stuff. And we're teaching people how to use it. No, we're going to let you go. So at that time, I was about ready to cry. We're doing this big business we thought was big business in our minds, right? And it had been on national television for a couple of years. And here's a company that we'd been with, Storm, I'd been with them like 16 years at that time. And now we're gone. We're just floating around. But what they can't take away from you, when you have bad things happen like that, or what you consider as bad, was a decision they made as a company that they felt was the right decision at that time. So I look back, I can't fault them for that. But what they can't take away from you is your knowledge base. And if you study fishing as much as some of these anglers do, and again, I like Jacob Wheeler because he's like a mechanical genius, right? Every little thing he does is thought out, but he thinks kind of like I do. I love that. I love that because he's going to be able to build some tremendous baits and stuff in the future. When he gets into a conversation with a company, if that company truly believes in him, he's going to really change fishing. KVD's done it. Kevin is one of the experts in bass fishing, but he also knows a lot about the things that he does every day. He studies, and then he can bring that to the company, right? Well, Keith and I decided that we would try, since we use so many different baits, that we would go to the big ICAST meeting and we would try to get small sponsorships and television commitments for medium to low dollars, but we would go non-exclusive. The industry doesn't like non-exclusivity, but that being said, we had a good enough reputation for trolling. We were considered probably the experts in hard bait trolling in the North, right? We helped offshore design their boards and on and on. A lot of the articles we did pertain to that. And so we actually had like 4 companies that were willing to work with us and on the show too. And we went into Berkley, and they had some baits that they were building in the Frenzy series, a few baits that we liked. We used them on lead core, and explained to the guys at Berkley, what we wanted to do. We wanted to talk about those baits. So we were wondering if they'd be interested in a non-exclusive arrangement. They said, well, we would like you to build baits, but we don't want to do a non-exclusive. We don't want to do where it's non-exclusive. We want to work with you on an exclusive basis. And I said, the guy that I was talking to at the time was Ron. His name was Ron. I said, Ron, it'd be an expensive deal for you. It means full-blown television advertising on a national television show. It means, personal contracts for the tournament end of things that we do. And, I'm to the point where I'm not going to give away my knowledge anymore. I need a royalty on things that we do. Keith and I both feel that way. And so he says, we're a big boy company, Gary. He said, we will do this. And so we walked out of that show not knowing what was going to happen. We had a kind of an excited feeling, but we didn't know. It's like, oh man, the non-exclusive thing might have worked really well. What is this going to mean for the TV show? What we want to do, our dreams are all kind of on the line, right? Because this is pretty big. Berkley, they got a lot of categories. They got line, and I had been with them for line and soft plastics, and have developed some baits with them in the soft plastics. And just as a sidebar for just a second, everyone's crazy about the Ned rig, right? That's the big deal. We built a product called the jig worm way before the Ned rig even was talked about. And the jig worm had a cult following in the walleye world. John Prochnow from Berkley, Keith and I built that bait. I got royalties on it. And that bait was out 25 years ago. And so, there are things that come from the walleye world that sometimes, at least in soft plastic, we were.
Oh, no doubt.
And
no doubt.
It caught fish just as well as Ned rig does now. You put it on jig head, that's how we fished it, and cast it or vertical jig it, whatever you wanted. It slaughtered fish. And I can remember going down and catching spotted bass down south in a big Mercury event with George Cochran. And George had just won the Bassmaster Classic. And I probably caught 30 fish in a row on this little bait. And he said, what are you using? And so I showed him, and, I don't know if he used something like that when he was tournament fishing after that or not, but it was like, but anyway, we did have some history with Berkley. So that's one of the reasons why there was some trust on the hard bait end of things, but we had never been with them with hard baits. And they told us, when we sat down with meetings, they told us, we've tried to build hard baits for a couple times now. And in the grand scope of the business, we don't think that we were all that successful. And the frenzy thing they felt like it was coming to an end. And so I looked at them and I said, let's analyze this industry. The biggest player in hard baits is Rapala. But would you all agree? And they said, yeah. I said, look at the baits they have. Those baits catch all species of fish. They weren't designed just to catch bass. Bass bite them because bass are pretty aggressive and they'll bite a lot of baits. I said, but if you want to look at a common denominator, if a walleye doesn't bite the bait, then it's only going to be a good bass bait. It won't be a multi-species type bait. So you have to change your thinking. You have to open the window to a much larger window. You want to have and be building a bait that all species love to bite. So that goes right down into an action thing. And so you have to build a bait with proper actions. And so we talked to Berkley about philosophy and time windows. If you build the right bait, the fish will start biting it in April, and they'll continue biting it all the way through the course of the year. If it's too high of an action bait, they might only bite it in July and August when the fish's metabolism is up. So when we started building baits with Berkley that would have a big window, a big bite window. Okay. And that's why we picked the Flicker Shed series. I felt that we could build a better shad bait with a little bit different action than anyone had. I just had that feeling. And when we started doing the R&D, it happened. Berkley built the plastic bodies and gave them to me. And I went out every day on the turtle flambeau flowage with a Dremel tool, and I worked with the baits. I cut stuff out. I ruined a lot of baits. But I finally got one that caught the living crap out of fish. And it outfished every other bait I tried against it. And so I went back to Berkley and I said, here it is. And then they said, well, we don't want that shape on our lip. I said, well, you got to have it. I just spent, almost a year getting the right shape to it so it give you the right action. I said, we can duplicate that action. He said, I firmly believe that I can build a bait here that'll give you the exact same action. And I said, okay, then I challenge you to do that. And it was one of their engineers in the business. And you know something? He did it. That team did it. There's a team of 2 or 3 guys and gals that were working on that. And they basically did it to the point where we measure actions. That was how we started developing this program with Berkley. And I could not tell the difference in the water. We couldn't tell the difference in video. So they actually did it. And they did it through weighting and a whole bunch of other things. A bait that I hand built, right? And with their help. It wasn't all Gary Parsons. Well, then Keith is like the technical guy in the group. Keith would go out and test these baits and troll with them and fish them against other companies' baits. We did that for a long time. Every single size of flicker, that's how we built them. We worked extremely closely with their engineering team. Now, I don't think anyone in the country ever did anything like this before, other than maybe Laurie Rapala with his family when he first built the original Rapala. But that's the type of dedication and commitment that, the whole Berkley team then bought into the philosophy. And so now we're working as a unit together, fishermen on the water with the scientists inside the company to build this Flicker series and family. I truly believe Flicker's family is probably the biggest family of crankbaits selling in the world right now. It's tremendous how that family has grown. And every single model that we come out with since has that same type of dedication. The hit stick, years to develop that thing. But it's got we can make the action even higher frequency than balsa if we want, with the technology that we work with Dan Spangler and his crew and Keith Olstrom. And they have a crew of scientists and engineers in that building that are second to none. They're fabulous.
I believe it. I'm super impressed with what they're coming out with, here lately.
And they're doing the same thing now in the bass world. They've learned so much on how to manipulate the bait shapes and stuff through these years because they take meticulous notes on all of it. So now you've got a 12-year track record of how to build a bait step by step. They can make a bait do whatever they want. And so when they work with a Hank Cherry, for example, and Hank wants that bait to do this and this and this, that Berkley team, and in particular Dan Spangler, who I'm going to give kudos to because the guy's a fisheries biologist and a scientist that's extraordinary. That Berkley team builds the bait that gives Hank his action. And Hank takes it out then and he can test it and make sure it's doing what he does. And he goes out then and takes this brand new bait, it's not even on the market yet. It's coming out now, and wins the Bassmaster Classic with it. So that's the type of background that Berkley has in hard baits. And I'm proud to have been part of that because Keith and I kind of taught that mentality and that the testing and all the things that it takes to get it right. We help teach that to those engineers and scientists. I'd worked with Doc Jones and John Prochnow on the soft bait end of things for years, but I really never did get a whole lot. I don't know anything about the chemicals that those guys put in their baits. I helped a little bit with some shapes, the 3-inch minnow Keith and I built at the same time as we built the jig worm. And, Corey's building some baits with them and stuff right now. But the hard bait thing is a whole different ballgame. Those guys really know their stuff with soft plastics and they can build shapes and stuff however they want and do what they want. But the hard bait game is a different game. You know, you see it. These companies come out and they start advertising, well, this is going to be the latest, greatest thing. And then you never hear a word about it after about 6 months. Everybody buys one, and then they find out they just don't catch fish the way that everybody said they would. When Berkley says we've got a new bait, you better pay attention, because that bait has been tested for a long time. It does probably catch fish better than any of the competitors out there, if not better, pretty much equal to. And so, you know, that's the mentality they have. It's a take no prisoners mentality, and let's build the best products on earth.
It's a really impressive company. And really, I mean, honestly, you could just go, you know what? I'm just going to buy Berkley everything, and really, in many respects, be completely outfitted with everything you need for a lot of freshwater fish species.
Well, you could. There's a lot of baits that still are really good baits built by various other companies. You know, the thing is Berkley is a big company. So when they come out with products, they have to try to get sales where to make sense for them, because they're so big. It has to be attractive to many species of fish now. They've kind of, even when I'm building a walleye bait, we're building it also for the bass. I've got a bait coming out next year. Corey and I do a hard bait, and I'm going to just drop the dime on it. It might be the best bass bait that they ever built. It's a possibility, because we started out as a walleye bait with some smaller sizes, and we built some bigger sizes. Started going, oh my God, we can't keep the bass off these baits. And so that's kind of the way we think now. Is let's build baits that can catch many species of fish. Maybe they're stronger with walleyes here with this style, but they might be stronger with bass here, but they're going to catch more species of fish. And, you know, Stunna catches a lot of walleyes. Hit sticks catch a lot of bass. And so that's the mentality that they have. It's a bigger mentality. So that means that there's a lot of places, like in a region, where maybe there's a specialized bait that another company can build. Or if they want to build like Berkley does, they're just going to have to spend the time for R&D. They can't go to China and just build these things. You know, grab some pretty thing off the shelf and then bring it back to the States and say, here's your new bait. It's not going to work. This company doesn't do business that way. They do business the scientific way, which is awesome.
Thanks for watching this clip from another fishing podcast. If you want to listen to the whole episode, all you got to do is click the link in the description, or to watch the full video, become a patron for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/anglinguploaded.